for the work session of the Board of Commissioners at 10:52. Second item on the agenda is public comment. Anyone from the public who wishes to speak? Welcome back, Dee.
How y'all doing? I just couldn't resist. I'm sorry. Just had to speak again. My name is D. Jones, passionate entrepreneur and visionary. I'm going to keep advocating for 3D printed construction and digital assets in esports and gaming. Also, I didn't really speak about esports, but we're looking to host the esports regional finals at the DeVos Place. Last year, we brought 39 schools, 26 high schools, 13 colleges to the DeVos Place, had a huge economic impact, filled some hotel rooms. But this year, we're looking to bring 80+ schools, and we're looking to bring a professional esports organization that's looking to host a cash prize in Ballroom A. I learned that the capacity for Ballroom A is 1,300 before you get to the fire code and need the fire department to come to Ballroom A. So super excited to actually host this and just be learning about the DeVos Place and just different things that just chipping at this vision and just continuously staying true to who I am, because I had a vision for this before a lot of people could see it or see it a visionary. I was called crazy, delusional, a lot of things that I won't say that people were calling me of different backgrounds and ethnicities, but I believed in this vision and I still believe in this vision, and you guys already know what I've achieved, and then you guys will see this year, at the end of this year, what we achieve also. I'm going to continuously ask you guys to continue to invest in affordable housing. I like what you guys done with IFF, because as I've said, I've gotten have conversations with David DeVelder and other people from IFF, and they're going to be helping us get the funding to actually acquire the Stockton School to have this full-fledged vision of having a community hub. I believe eventually our community hub will be across the globe. I say that because years ago I came here and I developed the Youth Justice Influence Esports League. That was our esports league that we developed in partnership with you guys, the 17th Circuit Court. That went from one facility on Cedar Street to now 3 facilities across King County. And so that organically grew across our county, and is helping reduce recidivism and helping these young people actually see a CTE technical paths where they probably won't have to be in poverty or go through the justice system continuously. So I've been able to help affect our justice system. I'm helping develop affordable housing innovation centers. I'm going to be developing an innovative lab. And I'd really like you guys to consider streaming on this decentralized streaming platform. As you guys stream on this platform, I'm seeing the TVs back there, and I get on channel 26 sometimes, and I see King County Board sessions and city sessions, but you guys aren't earning any revenue that could be reinvested into our community, into services, into affordable housing, into different things. And this could be funds that can be put into the general fund. These are digital assets that you guys can hold. And so I would like you guys to continuously think about this. Also, I'm going to be sending you guys the Gaudi token. That is the 3D printed construction company's token that they developed for 3D printed construction, which has utility use for infrastructure development and equitable use for infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? I see none. I don't know who I'm handing it over to, but I'll set it up from the board end. We had scheduled this work session on the budget. We added in a couple more again this year. In speaking with Vice Chair, Finance Chair Teal, at least my understanding, and we'll make sure that that's the same understanding from the budget and admin team, is we're in the part of the process where they're preparing the administrative recommendation for the Board of Commissioners. It's not fully baked yet at this point, but wanted an opportunity to get kind of a preview on where we are, or that sort of thing, and then answer some questions and have discussion before we get to that point in the process. So anyway, you guys can tell me if I'm off base on my understanding, but I'll hand it over to you, Al.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and you are completely on base. That's where we're at today. We do not have a proposed budget. That comes later. This is basically a chance to see where we're at in the process, see what's been requested, and answer commissioner questions. So I'll kick it off with a couple slides, and then Keith, our budget director, will pick it up from there. So good morning again, Chair and Commissioners. Welcome to the first board work session on fiscal year 2027 operating budget. And today we'll be focusing on the general fund, specifically the 2027 budget requests as compared to the 2026 adopted budget. The 2027 proposed budget will be presented to the board in June, but a sneak peek will be provided in today's presentation. So, today we're going to cover the budget process overview and timeline, general fund revenue assumptions, expense assumptions, requests by category, requested budget and preliminary, very preliminary proposed next steps and discussions. And this is basically an infographic of the process. I won't go through all that, but certainly we're always available to answer questions should you have any as you review this. We did get the PowerPoint out last week just to give folks a chance to get eyes on it first. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Keith, who will walk us through the rest of the presentation.
Morning, Keith.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us here today. I'm going to start it here with the key revenue assumptions for the general fund. Revenue projections are developed by fiscal services in the November to December timeframe each year, and then they're reviewed by department heads and updated for changes prior to finalization of targets, which occurs in late February to early March. The main revenue sources in the general fund are comprised of property tax, transfers in, and state revenue sharing. These three categories alone comprise nearly 75% of the general fund revenue. And in total, from the 2026 adopted budget to the 2027 requested budget, revenues are projected to grow about 4.2%. With property tax being the largest source of revenue in the general fund, the revenue provided by property tax is key to the health of the fund. We've discussed this in the past, but the Headley Amendment of 1978 and Proposal A of 1994 continue to limit growth in property tax revenue, with inflation being a key factor in the calculation. In 2026, the state of Michigan inflation rate multiplier was 2.7%, which limits individual taxable value growth to 2.7%, and it also contributed to a Headley rollback that we saw in 2026. So on this slide, we have some impacts of Proposal A and the Headley Amendment presented here. This chart shows the gap between the state equalized value for the county, which is the assessed value of properties in Kent County, and the state taxable value as limited by Proposal A. Property values continue to rise higher than taxable values, protecting residents from increases in taxes above the rate of inflation or 5%, whichever is less. However, it does limit the growth in revenue provided for government operations. So you can see the gap continues to widen here between STV and SEV. Other key revenue assumptions in the general fund include transfers in, which is increasing by $3.6 million. This is due to an increase in the transfer from the lodging tax fund, as well as an increase we're projecting from the corrections and detention millage fund. State revenue sharing is currently projected to be a slight decrease from the state's 2026 provision. What we have factored into the budget is the governor's recommendation currently. We don't know where state revenue sharing is going to land, but that was kind of our best guess at this moment. Internal support is increasing by $1 million due to increase in costs allocated to other funds outside of the general fund, as well as changes in the allocation basis for the internal support allocation. And there's a decrease in interest revenue on reserves, and this can be attributed to declining interest rates, as we're seeing in the past from the Federal Reserve, as well as lower cash reserves. And what that can be attributed to is we had a large influx of ARPA funding in the past year, and some of that money was used towards CIP projects. For example, Parks got about $15 million, and that money is being spent down, and so the interest earned on that typically goes into the general fund, is expected not to be there in the future. And then lastly, rent revenue is expected to decrease by $1.1 million, and this is mainly associated with the maturing of the Kent County Courthouse debt, in which the city of Grand Rapids operates a portion of that building and was paying for about 26% of the debt payment. Moving on to the expense side of the general fund budget request. In total, the expense budget request represent an increase of 6% from the 2026 adopted budget to 2027. The categories of personnel and transfers out comprise over 75% of the general fund request, and approximately 14.4 million of the total 15.3 million change that you're seeing here, which equates to 94% of the change, resides in just personnel and transfers out. So most of the change in this budget is going to be in those two categories. Personnel comprises over 54% of the general fund budget. The increase of 7.2 million in the personnel category is due to an increase in wages and benefits projected. The capital increase of $659,000 is explained on the handout that's provided for you. And then the increase of 7.2 million in transfers out is primarily related to a new $7 million debt payment that we're anticipating to fund the new admin building if debt is issued in fiscal year 2027. Right now, in the budget, the transfer is currently projected to go into strategic capital if the debt is not issued in 2027. And the amount in the proposed budget, I just want to mention as well, we're planning on having it be a $5 million amount as opposed to $7 million. And the reason for that being is we are planning to stagger the debt and have it grow to $7 million in about 3 years when we have another current debt service fall off of our books. That debt service right now is about a $2.6 million annual payment. And then each year we usually get a question on what goes into the transfers out / other category in the general fund. So I've provided the detail here on this slide. And if anyone has any questions about the detail here, we can discuss that afterwards. And this slide here shows the general fund statement of the budget request by category. As seen in the previous slides, revenues projected to grow 4.2%, while on the expense side, the budget requests have a growth of 6%. So that creates a gap here of about 4.6 million. The Operating Budget Review Committee has reviewed the department request over the last couple weeks, and we have a preliminary budget proposal that you're going to see in the handout that proposes a balanced budget after all is said and done. So the handout provided compares the budget request and the preliminary proposed budget to prior years by department. In the handout, there's a narrative that explains the reasoning behind the change from the 2026 adopted budget to the 2027 requested budget by department. And just as a note there on that, the preliminary budget will have a department listing in the budget book that explains the changes from 2026 to 2027 for the proposed budget. And then for next steps here, just wanted to mention that we're currently in process with finalizing the proposed budget, as Al mentioned earlier as well. We're planning on distributing the proposed budget on June 9 into your mailboxes, so you'll have it for the June 11 board meeting date. If you're here, you can get them at that time. And then we're going to have a board work session again on June 25, which will focus on the general fund proposed request. So it'll be similar to this, but instead of the general fund request, it'll be the general fund proposed budget. And then shortly after that, on July 7, we'll have a board work session on non-general fund budgets. And specifically, we usually focus on the special millage funds in that presentation. And then the public hearing is going to be planned for August 13, and then budget adoption is planned for August 27 this year. So with that, I think we can move on to our Q&A portion.
Great. Thank you, Keith. We appreciate it. So you guys have some supplemental information in the packet in front of you. Are there questions, comments? Yes, Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Green. So in Al's presentation, you know, the debt on that courthouse is finished June 1st of 26, which is next week. So for my years on a school board, building all the buildings we did, I know how the bonds and debts were always shuffled. So when this debt on that building is expired. It's already spoken for other projects that we push down the road with higher payments at the end instead of in the beginning.
So if we build a new administration building, we're expecting a certain debt payment on that. And so this payment will be used to help fund that down the road. It's just a staggering of the actual debt that would be issued to give us some more capacity until we reach that point where the debt falls off the books for the other bond that we're currently paying.
How many bond debts do we have on different buildings right now? Is that the last one, or, I mean, what are we still paying on?
Well, that particular debt payment, I think, is on the animal shelter and the district court, as well as I think the Department of Health and Human Services building is that particular $2.6 million payment. And that was one that we just refunded recently. Other than that, there isn't a whole lot that is funded by the general fund in terms of debt. There's a corrections debt payment, two bonds there. And then the general fund has this one for $2.6 million. And Scott, do you know if there's any others? Okay, so not in the general fund.
Okay, so moving forward, I kind of see the need for buildings because there's going to be less employees. Is there a long-term strategy of what 20 years out looks like? Are we situated well enough to make more, something new, or is it just pay off what we got? And I know it's an open question.
No, I think, let me answer that two different ways. First, I think what we owe you, and hopefully in a month to 6 weeks we'll deliver, is a dollars and cents look at we have three kind of big things going on with facilities in different areas. And then we also, and so those are things we owe you a report that has the very best estimated costs that we can get to. And then this morning, we talked about even updating the cost to refurbish this facility, just so we're looking at apples to apples. And so that will kind of help us determine a schedule or how we move into the future. Certainly, as a growing county, that is a concern that we have to provide, continue, I think, to provide appropriate facilities to do business from for the public. And the whole AI question is a really interesting question. It's almost like when COVID hit and we were forced to say who's essential employees and who are non-essential employees. When you look at county services, a lot of them have to be delivered by human beings, for one thing. And then we do know that there are also areas where we do have some kinds of positions that could be impacted by AI, but we also know that we need more and different positions to manage AI. And so we're not sure where all that will settle out, but we do know that a significant chunk of our workforce, the jobs are done in person, human being to human being. And so I think we have taken that into account as best we can. It changes every day. And so are we perfect? Absolutely not. Are we taking things into consideration about with what will be the future split between working in person and working at home, and that is impacting design. What will be the future with AI, which we don't know, but we at least can evaluate the services we provide and the people that we have and try to figure out the core of what we know will continue to be done in person.
Is it a safe statement that a person probably isn't going to lose their job in a place like this to AI, but they're going to lose their job to someone that knows how to use AI?
I think what I see to answer this, and you'll tell me if I don't do an adequate job, but I think what I see more of is that our whole workforce is going to become more and more skilled at using AI. And that over time, just like what we saw when we implement new systems, I think the mantra was a long time ago, you put in a computer system, you're gonna cut a lot of staff costs. Well, that never really ended up to be a really big deal. So I think it's more of, we'll become more proficient, positions will morph, we'll see some turnover where maybe positions require something that needs a different skill set, but I don't see it in big numbers. I think that we will grow with AI over time. We need to, IT has done a really good job of setting the groundwork with Copilot and ChatGPT and other things. In fact, Tim presented at the conference last week and did a great job with that. But I do think that when I look at some companies that have the huge layoffs and I look at the raw number of accountants and other positions, even law positions that AI is being applied, we don't have that kind of a mass to apply it to. So I'm not anticipating as big. We have to have a strategy, we need to be prepared, we need to think through these things, but today I'm not anticipating a big wholesale change in our employment base based on AI.
What is that noise? Can you guys hear that noise?
It's the computer against the microphone.
All
I
right,
thought somebody was sucking out of a big straw back there.
yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Keith, give him a raise. Nice work. Thought we had the old Woody Woodpecker down here from Wood Radio or something. Commissioner Pakla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, so property tax is at the top of a lot of conversations right now, and specifically some property tax conversations at the state level. So I've got two questions. The first is, I think the first question is actually a timing question. When we do our estimates for FY27 and we look at the property tax revenue, are we making assumptions about the number of uncapped transfers that are happening, or are these actual dollars that we have in hand based on what has happened in the past?
At this point, we're assuming that the world stays the same, because we really have no basis to change our assumptions on a proposed or potential property tax reform package. When we were in Lansing, we did make the request pretty much with everyone we talked to that we would love to be part of any discussions that lead up to a reform proposal on the ballot or legislation. Not sure if that'll happen or not, but at this point, the system is pretty well set through equalization. They do the projections every year. They send those to fiscal. We put those in the budget. And the projections have been very solid, always. And so that's how we're continuing, and we'll just have to change if the world changes. Or if the picture becomes crystal clear, yeah, then we can start to make some assumptions. But right now, with the information we have, we're basically assuming that next year will be like this year.
Okay, that's helpful. The other question I had was, a little bit building off of Commissioner Ponstein's question about AI, but thinking through one of the increases in expenses that we have in this year's budget is some additional software licensing. For the Sheriff's Department, I'm sure have other software licenses that are changing their costs over the course of time. Is there ever a conversation about the cost benefit? I'm sure there is a conversation, so let me reframe it. There is a conversation, I'm sure that there is, about the cost benefit of externalizing that kind of software support versus bringing folks on internal to the county to build sort of, unique systems that are specific to us that maybe don't cost us an additional $55,000, right? Because $55,000 a year is starting to get toward that level of that might be a full-time equivalent job at some point in time, right? So where do we draw that line? Where do we start having those conversations about bringing things internal versus external with the costs?
Software licenses, I think, over time have become the hidden death in county budgets. And I do know that we have very robust discussion about the packages we're responsible for in the administration as far as are we getting the bang for the buck. We've made several changes, probably dropped 6 or 7 over the last few years, added a couple others. But as far as your specific question, I don't know, and maybe Tim might be the best one to answer that. Do we have that discussion about bringing on staff versus the cost of the support?
While Tim's coming up here, I want to just say I've recognized that on the software side that, being diligent, because I'll come in here in a meeting and they're using some like Fox PDF, whatever. And I'm like, where's Acrobat? And they're like, well, it's expensive. We got this one. It works great. So I just want to say I appreciate that. But go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, good morning. It's a good question. And we do have robust discussions almost on an hourly basis sometimes. And, but I will say, you know, the general move to cloud-based applications is really what's driving a lot of this, right? When things were on-prem, we had a little bit more control over costs and licensing and support staff to go along with that. So that is always part of that discussion we have is, hey, is it better for us to bring this thing on-prem, or we have current staff on site to help support that? Or, excuse me, are we being forced to the cloud by maybe the vendor themselves who don't even offer that on-premise? And certainly the proliferation of cloud and the ease of acquiring it, and really just the diversity of it used across the county really make it increasingly difficult from an IT perspective to support everything. Sure. So really, but I guess to directly answer your question, Commissioner, we always have that discussion.
Great, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
The latest is Tim moved us, much of our Zoom licenses have been reduced, and we're using Ring Central now for a lot of those meetings. So, yeah, I would say that from what I see, not necessarily your specific question, but there is a constant focus on how we can trim costs there.
Great, thank you.
All right, Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair. Kind of on the same property tax discussion, how much of county, how much does the county receive from personal property tax? And are we ready, I guess, you know, if you know, some of these changes do occur?
Well, to answer your second question, I mean, we always have to be very fluid and ready. Yes, we're ready to deal with what gets thrown at us. As far as the amount of personal property tax, do you have that, Keith?
Yeah, we get a local community stabilization share payment from the state for that, and it's around 4.7 million is what we have baked into the budget.
Minority Vice Chair Faber.
Okay. Yeah, I have like 10 questions, so we'll start with 3. How about that?
We'll
Sorry,
give you
guys.
one.
We can just get you out of the way, and everybody can take a quick.
Yeah, you all go to use the restroom. No, there's stuff we can follow up with. First, I should know the answer. I don't. The appropriation lapse is 6.5 million. Can you remind me what that is again?
Yeah, so that is essentially to assume that the entire budget that we bake isn't going to be fully spent, and a large majority of that would be associated with full-time personnel, because we project all positions as if they're gonna be fully filled for the entire year, just so if they are, a department has the budget to be able to have their positions filled, but a lot of times you have turnover and vacancy, so a lot of the lapse comes from those positions being vacant.
So that's kind of our safeguard carrying forward year over year. That's
Yep.
what okay, thank you.
It helps to not restrict the budget down to, too significantly, realizing that there's going to be vacancy savings.
Great, thank you. Couple questions. Can you talk a little bit about so obviously the sheriff makes up half of our general fund, and a small change in the sheriff's budget results in big swings compared to some of our smaller departments. Can you explain the interconnect between the corrections millage? So we have 3.1 million coming into the general fund from the corrections millage. And can you just explain that dynamic between the corrections millage and our general fund?
Yeah, so the corrections millage can be used for operating costs and debt for correction purposes. And right now, the corrections millage doesn't cover near the level of
Correct.
the operating costs for the correctional facility. So we use the correctional millage to cover the debt that is outstanding in that fund. And then any excess above and beyond the debt, if we're able to transfer that into the general fund to help cover operations, we go ahead and do that.
So, you know,
Operations of the correctional facility, because it's way more. It goes in the general fund where you could argue it goes to corrections because the corrections amount is so much greater than the.
Gotcha.
amount.
yeah, I mean, this is one of our challenges. I think in 2009, the corrections millage was approved at 0.9 maybe, and now we're down to, what was it, 0.74 or something like, you know, like it's, and I know this is on our radar moving forward, but, you know, I think we saw this in the CIP budget as well. I think moving into the next year or two, we need to have a very robust conversation about how to fund this part of our budget and that interconnect between the millage and general fund support, especially as we see these numbers kind of start to distance with property taxes. So I look forward to that discussion. And then last one for now, in terms of the internal support number, so we're increasing by, what else goes into us determining what that, I see the employee count changes maybe dictate how other departments kind of pay into that. But what else goes into our calculation of sort of how we fund these core services from other parts of the budget?
Yep, so within the internal service cost allocation support, we have a consultant that helps us put together a pretty large cost allocation plan. What they do is they look at the actual expenses for services like human resources, facilities, budget, accounting, and then they determine, okay, the funds outside of the general fund, we need to allocate, say, human resources to DPW, because they're a fund external to the general fund. So the allocation basis of HR costs would most likely be distributed based on the number of FTEs within that fund. So then they would get the share of it. So costs can increase within the internal service groups, as you're aware. There could be new positions that are added. We could have a software upgrade, for example, like we changed software systems, had a major upgrade in the 2024 timeframe from CGI A360 to their Advantage 4 system. So that comes with a little bit of an added cost that then increases the cost allocation total. And then in terms of the allocation basis, a good example I can give you there is indigent defense. Used to be contract-based, but once we took that in-house and we added, I think, around 70 employees or so to an internal department, then now we have HR, payroll type services that can be applicable to those employees.
Great, thank you so much.
Yep.
I'll pause.
Commissioner Stack.
Thank you, Chair Green. The general fund budget request explanation sheets, I don't want to be clear here. Is this the department head's explanation to administration on their request?
So this is actually my analysis of the changes in, from the department's request
So
compared
this is your
to the-
interpretation of the request from the departments and the changes? Because the phrase projected personnel changes for wages and benefits seems to be sort of the word of the day. And it's in almost every one of these. Is that generally then your interpretation? This is just the cost of the existing personnel is going to go up because wages go up and benefits go up?
Yep.
Okay, if there's a specific change in personnel additions or deletions, do we have deletions ever? But whichever, that you'll call out here more specifically.
Yes, yep. So
Okay.
last year we had that on the list. This year we have the position moratorium in place, so you're not going to see that.
Okay, well, that's helpful because I thought they were really all in lockstep here and how they analyzed this. So so that gives you a couple of them. In indigent defense, there is it's a small number, as I recall here, but there is a cost. And I was thinking conceptually, at least, all indigent defense costs get passed through to the state. And apparently that's not so.
Yeah, yep, I can speak to that. So the indigent defense has its own fund, separate of the general fund, which is where the state grant is recorded, as well as the local contribution that has to go into that. And that's around 2.4 million for the local contribution, and the rest is funded by the state. But within the grant, there are certain things the grant will not cover. And what you see in the general fund is that certain thing. So what I can tell you what it is the state will not cover local attorney bar dues, but it does cover state bar dues, I believe. So the state bar dues are in the indigent defense fund. But administration thought it was appropriate that those attorneys also have their local bar dues covered for the Grand Rapids Bar Association. So that's that little piece that you see in the general fund.
Is there a continuing education cost in there too? I thought.
continuing education should be covered.
Well, I would think it should be covered because it's required.
Yeah, it's required by one of the 13 principles, and so the state should be reimbursing for that.
So this is
correct.
just the local bar dues.
The local bar
Okay.
dues, yeah. And just because I think it's an important point for clarification, the amount that the county was already paying for indigent defense up to the passage of the MIDC Act was frozen at the 3-year rolling average of 2010, 11, and 12. And that's what counties were required to pay going forward. I think maybe 2017, the state put in a 4% increase on our requirement, but other than that, the state's been really good about covering all additional costs due to the change.
But that comes from the state, so it's not like we're
Right.
modifying that
Right.
or can modify that. So, okay, another question on the additional costs for sheriff services or security services at the courthouse, 61st and the 82. Is there a greater demand for those services, or is this just, again, an organic change in the costs of staff?
Yeah, it's just an organic change in the cost of staffing for those services.
Okay. I raise it every year. Mental health, it's the same number it was for 25 years. Is that ever going to change? Is it ever up for realization that
No, never.
$2,000
No,
are not the same?
that number is based on
What's the agreement at
the
time of
matching
authority?
requirement for the Medicaid money. And that's like separate of there's a local share requirement. When we made this an authority in 2001, I think it was, that number was frozen per the law. What happens when you go to an authority, that amount that the general fund is contributing freezes. And so it's pretty much stayed there ever since. It also gets tricky if you provide money. You can't provide money that pays for Medicaid mandates because you could literally lose your entire Medicaid share if you do that. You can't supplant entitlements that are paid for with Medicaid. So it is kind of tricky, but as your administrator, I probably would not recommend increasing that.
Well, I'm not urging you to increase it, but the reality is that it is supposed to cover, I understand, it's supposed to cover the cost of the generalized services that they're still provide throughout the county, but those services obviously have probably multiplied by 2 or 3 since then, and
We can look into this further, but I can tell you that the mandated amount that the general, and it wouldn't have to be the general fund. We could ask community partners to join in and make up that local share. But the amount that has to come as local share is set by CMS and the feds that we have to pay.
well, it's easy to get them to change. So my last question is, zoo, liability insurance, do we pay for all the liability insurance
The property and casualty,
on all the facilities?
right, but the property and casualty insurance we have, yes.
Okay. Is that subject to review on, because it seems like kind of an operating cost, but
Well, as far as how much and what is under the purview of the insurance authority now. But as far as who pays it, you mean?
Yeah, who pays it?
The question might be, should we be reimbursed for that?
or is
Because,
it an operating cost that the zoo should pick up?
right,
I'm not wearing my zoo hat right now.
right. Yeah, that's a discussion we can have.
So just to clarify, is there any other authorities that have our property that you're overseeing that we also do it for them, like the airport?
The airport is different because it's a standalone governmental authority, so they actually pay for their own liability insurance, and we don't cover that from the county proper.
This would just be the contract between the zoo entity.
Right, we actually own and operate a zoo, but we hire a concierge to actually operate the zoo per the zoo operating agreement, which is different than the relationship with the airport, which is technically a governmental unit created by the county, so.
I'd like to see, do you get a new zoo hat when we open up a new exhibit? Like, did you just get an otter hat? and then hopefully a draft hat in a couple of years. Okay, good.
Coonskin hat?
I had a yeah, okay. I had a follow-up, on, Commissioner Steck's question. Do we cover the prosecutor local bar dues as well for those guys? and
Yes.
gals? Okay. Thank you.
Actually, any attorney that works for Kent County, we cover their dues.
Oh, that's a good deal for Moldy too, then.
Yes.
All right,
Very appreciative.
Commissioner Halsted.
I just had a question about the other social services. What is included in other social services?
That is our, let me take a look here at that here a second. That's our prevention programming funds. And I thought this question might come up.
I can help a little
Okay.
bit. So the prevention, which was created right around 2000, 2001, that's part of that, and then the unmet needs, I believe, is also part of that. That'd be the other. Yeah.
The prevention programming funds are there for family support services, which are offered to at-risk families with children from birth to age 5 in Kent County. And it's my understanding that those funds within the prevention programming cannot be duplicative of the funds that are in the Ready by 5 millage. And that's been kind of a standard set-aside dollar amount from year to year, too, that is unchanged.
You follow up, Commissioner, or no? Okay. We'll come back to you if we need to. Commissioner DeBoer, did you have one? I saw your hand up. Okay. I don't have anybody in the line at the moment. Commissioner Bujak, and then we'll come back to Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair Green. Can you go back to the slide that you presented, transfers out? I think that the lion's share, well, 50% of what we're looking at in the budget is included in this list. I just want, can you just leave that up there so all the commissioners can see what we're talking about in that particular fund? I wanted to follow up on Commissioner Steck's questions about the courts and specifically about guardianship. And it's my understanding that that cost is included in this area. And my question is there a grant from the state that we're issued for that particular effort and those services? And if not, why are we funding that through the general fund? And what can we do to put pressure on the state to get more funding to cover that?
So Kayla Gasho from the probate court and also oversee the guardianship program. We receive $65,000 from the state of Michigan that goes towards guardianship services. We also receive funding from 2 local hospitals, the senior millage and the county.
And $65,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money. Is the funding adequate for the amount of services that we're providing? I mean, are the services we're providing in more need than the funding allows?
Right, the need is greater than the funding allows. Based on what we get from the state, that qualifies to pay for about like 62 clients a month for the program, but the state, we get referrals from them through APS and other services, but mostly APS. Their requests greatly exceed, 60 or 62 a month.
And how do we get more money from the state? Well, I mean, I don't
Excellent
think that should be,
question.
I don't think the burden should be on the county and our general fund.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you would make that one of your legislative priorities.
I think we
or,
did, did we?
Yeah,
Yeah, so we did.
You've unlocked a chief complaint from MAC for a while, Wally.
Okay. And, I guess that was the only question I had.
right.
So we are working on guardianship. It isn't mandated. I think 2017 or 18. There was an effort to get the hospitals to invest. Not all of our hospitals invest. Kaylee's done a really good chart that shows that maybe hospitals benefit more, that could maybe support this more for the great benefit they're given, because ultimately, the judge doesn't have to appoint a guardian.
If there's no one willing to serve.
Right. If there aren't any available, then it can't be appointed. And so it's not, what I'm trying to say is it's not, and in my opinion, nor should it be, 100% Kent County, where we say we're going to pick up every single cost increase that comes. I see this as more of a partnership where we need people to step up with the county to get this done. So that's,
Yep. Yeah, and that's the way it's always been. It's always been a partnership where we have multiple revenue streams. We just, recently had one of our revenue streams decrease, so we're looking, of course, to supplement that in other ways. And whether that be from the hospitals or other community partners, we're still looking into that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylee.
Thank you.
It's always a joy when you come back here and slum it with us. It's nice to see you.
It's not
Thank you.
slumming.
Commissioner Faber.
Thank you. Question about our economic development line item. I know we're putting deer management in that line, and we have the Kent Conservation District in right place. I'm sure there was some discussion about why deer management goes into economic development and not, say, the Parks Department, but would love to hear what the rationale is.
that line was initially created to be the place for the right place. Expenditure is budgeted. And then I think over time, a festival came out of that line, and now festival's gone. And so different things have, festival was out of Hotel Motel, right? Okay, so that wasn't there. But so the Soil Conservation District, I think the goal was to get them to 100,000, that comes out of that. So it has become a little bit of a catch-all, is the best answer.
Well, contemplate changing the name of the fund or finding a different place for it, because it is a little odd. And then would like to advocate for specific funding put into the policy and administration budget for a countywide survey or poll. I know we've talked about this in the past, and I would like to see it actually included somewhere so that it happens this year.
Yeah, we have that in the communications budget.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Steck.
Thank you, Chair Green. Just following up a little bit on the conversation about the guardianship program. I don't think that the requests here have an increase in county contribution toward that program, does it?
Yeah, the request does have a pretty large increase in county contribution.
How much is the increase?
The requested increase was around 200,000, but the actual amount that we're putting in the proposed budget is closer to 100,000, just below it.
It's still, and Kaylee's standing behind you, ready to pounce. Is the county's percentage here still a minority percentage of the overall project or overall program?
No.
It's a majority contributor?
It's pretty close to the hospital contribution. It's half, the county is half. So what happened last year, we get the funds from the hospitals, and that doesn't expire at the end of the year. So if there's like a little bit over, it can go into a, balance fund that we can utilize for other services. So what we did last year was we utilized a majority of that rollover, creating a bigger gap. So your increase looks larger, but it's not that we're going to be able to offer more services. It's just supplementing that rollover that we have now used up. So we still are at a loss come October 1 for services. We will be able, we're still waiting on funding decisions from other partners, but as it looks, we will still be at a loss.
But the key partners would be the state, the county,
Hospitals.
two of the hospitals
And senior
in town,
millage.
and senior millage.
Yep.
Okay. And we're talking, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Faber, do you have a follow-up?
Oh, just a Commissioner Coleman made a good point that the deer management program does deal with bucks and doe, and so having an economic probably makes some sense.
All right, I think we're done here at that point. Oh, boy.
Deal with the deer management problem by reintroducing wolves to Kent County.
Okay. Commissioner Morales. No, you were just doing okay, oh, yeah, okay. Commissioner Halsted, please don't be another pun.
It's not.
Thank
I don't
God.
think that fast. All right, can you clarify for me, I should already know this, but when you look at the Ready by 5, and then you've got the family support prevention, I'm not sure what the unmet needs are, and then you have the child care fund, is there overlap between those? Like, what are the different, are they all kind of funding the same thing? Does that make sense?
There's an ongoing conversation on this, Commissioner Halsted, so yeah, Jenny, please.
Yeah, there is potential for some overlap. Ready by 5 millage is for children birth to 5 to prepare them to be successful in kindergarten. Prevention was defined many years ago by a former Board of Commissioners as an initiative to invest now to prevent longer-term, more expensive problems in the future. So that has looked like different things over the years. We do a request for proposal process to identify organizations and programs that we believe accomplish that mission. Then we had unmet needs. That's kind of housed in the Kent DHHS. The DHHS board selects those also through an RFP process, and that's intended to identify things that other funding sources are not available for, or something that's partially funded by other sources, but you need a little bit more to really meet the need that is currently unmet. Across the board, all kinds of things. So because those two are relatively broad, sometimes there can be a little bit of similarity, but never duplication. Not duplicating the same thing, but some similar service areas, for example, could be funded.
So then is the child care fund
Child care
that we
fund.
see on the general fund transfers out in other detail, is that the same?
That's different. Yeah, the vast majority is juvenile detention. Happy for you to speak to that. There is a small amount of the child care fund that we allocate in partnership with Child Welfare Services at MDHHS, Kent County, specifically for children and families involved in child protective services, to give them the services they need to keep their families together, as opposed to families needing to come apart due to a child welfare case.
And I should say that the child care fund's different than our millage programs because the rules are all written by the state. It's created under state law. We have plenty of battles over what's eligible, what isn't, and they pay 50% of the cost. And that was won in a class action lawsuit about a few decades ago. But I should also say Vice Chair Teal raised the question over a year ago now about overlap between some of our millages. And we do have a draft report that we're going to go over with a small team that's been meeting to review that. So, yes, so there is some overlap in the parts that the county has created, but those don't really, there isn't really overlap like with the child care fund, which is a different set of regulated activity.
I don't have anybody in the queue. Others? Questions or comments? Wow, I'm impressed. I don't have anything specific. I wanted to just say I appreciate that we are able to do this. I think this is productive. We had a conversation about, whether or not to keep this input session here. And I think we all agreed that it was important to keep it on the schedule. It's not really just education about what does what. It's kind of looking at where we are, and I think all of us learn a new thing when we get together on the budget. So I think it's very helpful. I appreciate the finance and budget team, all the work that you guys do all year, but this time of year especially. So All right, any commissioner comments? I guess that's last call if there's anything you didn't get in. I see none, so with that, we are adjourned at 10:46.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
The nut of the dispute here, or the conversation seems to me, is what's in those proposed memorandums as opposed to what's on the language of the ballot.
Yep.
Okay.
Commissioner Morales.
Just a question for clarity. For the, can you put the timeline?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So for May 5, the millage advisory committee is going to choose one of the scenarios, or are we going to choose a scenario on the 14th?
No, we would make the millage advisory committee, and I have to regroup based on the conversation, just see where we are in this timeline, to see if that makes sense or not. But by the time we make whatever comes to the Board of Commissioners will be a recommendation from that committee. So it won't be including it. Technically, according to the board rules, the job of the committee is to make a recommendation to the chair, which is kind of goofy in this instance because I'm the chair of the committee and the chair of the board, but we'll make a recommendation, and then as the chair, my intention would be to send that recommendation to the Board of Commissioners for consideration.
But that would be for one scenario.
Yes. No, we're not going to, that's sort of the intent of having the smaller group, is to spend more time with this and deep dive so that we don't have to do that with the full board. But that's also why we wanted to have a work session today, recognizing that this is of great interest to the full board so that everybody has a chance to get all the information and ask questions and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Others? We have a question slide, a requisite question slide. I love it. You never know how to finish these things. You gotta, yeah, that's good. Yeah, are there any questions or comments from commissioners for anyone? I think we've given time to do that, but there's time available. I'm not trying to cut anybody off, so. Yeah, Vice Chair Faber.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're right now, we're really focused on kind of getting the millage and the language across the line. We know there are a number of other potential opportunities for the county to invest or think differently about our investment in John Ball Zoo and the green space, park space. And it's hard not to kind of intermingle those two things, but I would like to continue the conversation, and I know we have our neighborhood group doing that, but, I think trying to get a real clear line of sight in terms of what is happening with that space, specifically the parking, and how we're gonna handle, and it may not be appropriate for that to be in these board resolutions, MOUs, et cetera, but I think this is our opportunity to nail those things down as well. I think we owe that to the community, that they really know what the timeline looks like to the best of our ability to resolve some of those lingering accountability issues. And so I just want to acknowledge and thank the neighbors for coming out and continuing to advocate for really clarity and accountability on those issues.
Thank you. Others? Commissioner Stack?
There's no limit on a work session, is there?
No, well, not today. We've blown past that.
So this dynamic between predictability and rigidity in these memorandums to help both organizations understand what they're looking at, I get that. At the same time, there is some value in some capacity to be modifiable or fluid in those, just because life changes and circumstances change. So I'd encourage you to kind of look at that good balance between building in some fluidity into the agreements so that still preserves the ability to respond effectively to those changes.
Thank you. I think that's a good suggestion. Others? I don't see any. I'm gonna call it, so this is the last just chance for right now. We, of course, this will go back to, at some point, in the near future, the committee, as the timeline said, and then the full board. So if you have follow-up questions, I know, I'll just state, just for the, I guess for the record, there were several commissioners that, were attending a, county conference today. I think 5 of our group that were there. So they have an opportunity to, we've given them an opportunity if they wish to individually to meet with Josh and get the same information, and/or maybe they're hearing this on the recording of the meeting as I'm speaking now at another point, but just an FYI on that. All right. Item number 4 on the agenda is commissioner comments. Any commissioner comments? I hope not. All right, I don't see any. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.